So first thing to say, and I think the title of the workshop kind of gives it away, productivity does not equal busy. Busy is very different when you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, but that stuff is not having an impact. It's not moving you forward, especially for entrepreneurs that really need to focus on the key things, the core things that are really going to help them build the business. Just grinding away, sending random emails, doing these kinds of random postings and things will keep you busy so that you'll be able to end the day and say, wow, I was really busy today, but that doesn't mean you actually accomplished anything. Productivity is also not working 12 plus hours a day. And there is a reason for this that I will get into, and it's related to how our brains work. So everything I'm going to talk about today is based on neuroscience. So it's based on what we know about the human brain. I'll get into the fact that technology has evolved much faster than our brains have. And that's really what creates this kind of issue where we have all of these apps and all of these things, and yet all of this technology is not actually helping us be productive. Productivity, and along with that, not being busy, it's actually not trying to get 37,000 things done each hour or even 17,000 things done each hour. That's just not what productivity is about. So what it's about is working smart. I mean, yes, you can allow tasks to take all day that might only really need to take 3 hours. That's not really the smartest way of working. And I will get into why you actually need to not work all day, because there's, again, when you understand the brain science, you'll understand why. And working strategically, again, figuring out what your priorities are, what is going to move you forward, and working on that. Productivity is about creating effective results in a shorter period of time. So when you stop the distractions, when you stop the disruptions, when you learn how to focus, when you learn how to align your focus time with the work that you need to do, you can actually get things done much faster, because when your brain's ready to do the thing, whatever the thing might be for you, and you get it in the right time frame, you can move really fast. Productivity also helps you avoid burnout, and which is something that these 12-hour, 14-hour grinding away days are a pretty good recipe for burnout. And I don't know if anybody follows Ariana Huffington, she of the HuffPost, and she started this whole thing about wellness. And the reason she did that is because she actually got so burned out that I think she passed out on stage or something and like hit her head on the floor and had a fairly massive physical issue because she'd burned herself out doing this kind of grinding away kind of thing. And that's how she started to get into the wellness. Productivity also helps you decrease stress. I know a lot of, especially for working women who have kids, young kids, they feel guilty during the day when they're working, can't pay attention to the kids, and they feel guilty when they're at home with the kids because they're not working. And being productive during the day allows you to get your work done. And then you can say, okay, great, I got my work done. I got what I wanted to do done. So now I can go home and be with my kids and my spouse or partner or pets without any guilt, which I think is key. So productivity is going to help you work on what gives you the biggest bang for the buck, right? And I think everybody here is probably familiar with the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, which basically says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort, right? So if you have clients already, probably most of your revenue is coming from a few clients or like a handful of clients, roughly 20%. And I mean, it's not 80-20 is not an exact figure, but you get the gist of it, that focusing on a small amount of effective tasks is what's going to give you the results. And again, you get more done at work in a shorter period of time, which means that you have time to spend with your family, your friends, your pets, and you have time to recharge. And later we'll get into why it's actually important to recharge, which again, based in neuroscience. It's important to have a life that is beyond work. And It's important for your physical and emotional health. It's important for your brain. It's also important later in life, so that you have some social connections and some hobbies and activities that you can do when you're no longer working. I used to be a financial planner, and so retired people, the ones that stayed active, that had hobbies, that did things, that had a good social network in retirement, are the ones that had a really good, really enjoyable retirement, and they could live their long lives and enjoy them. And the ones that didn't, that basically kind of stopped work and then went, I don't have anything to do, they're the ones that have a lot of difficulty with retirement. So productivity is important for basically everything. And now I'm going to get into what the brain actually has to do with it. And again, because a lot of this is really derived from what we know about the human brain, right? So we know that animal brains took millennia to evolve, and our human brains really have only been around a couple 100,000 years, give or take, right? So there's a lot of, you've probably heard of systems 1 and 2. If you've ever read Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. And at the end, I do have some book resources. Basically, what people kind of refer to as the lizard or the reptilian brain, that controls things like the fear reflex, that controls fight or flight. And on top of that, we have the human brain, and the human part of the brain is the one that developed, that does the executive functioning. It's the one that we use when we're making lists of pros and cons, or advantages and disadvantages. If you're an accountant and you are reviewing a tax return, numbers are all human brain stuff. If you're a writer, doing all the writing is human brain stuff. So, the thinky work, which is my technical term for it, comes from the human brain, which again is relatively, I mean, if you look at the timeline of animal brains, the human part of the brain is relatively recent. And one thing that was actually kind of interesting for me to learn personally was that the conscious mind, because I'm very conscious of my conscious mind. I mean, I think some people are very aware of what's going on a conscious level. Not everybody is, but underneath, it's kind of like an iceberg, right? The conscious mind is the tip of the iceberg, and the subconscious is like everything under the water, and it's huge. I mean, obviously the subconscious takes care of things like the breathing rate. The subconscious mind is the one that when we fire up the fight or flight reflex, it starts doing things like increasing the breathing rate so you can get more breath into the lungs so that you can run away. It also, sends blood to the muscles. So again, you can run away, so you can prepare to fight or flight. But it also helps us with decisions. A lot of decisions are made based on emotions, and that's all kind of subconscious. So there's really a lot going on, which is key for business owners. And the reason I bring it up is because there does need to be an alignment of what's going on in your subconscious with what's going on in your conscious mind. So if you're sort of consciously thinking to yourself, boy, I really need to cold call a lot of people to see if I can get some clients for my thing, but you've got this kind of unconscious block that says, oh, I don't like cold calling, or cold calling is sleazy, or only sad salespeople do cold calling, then you're not actually going to be able to marry those things, because your subconscious is going to be preventing you from actually doing what your conscious brain is saying. No, this is what we got to do. This is how we're going to get clients.
Oh, JJ, I had a question.
Yeah.
So are emotions part of your human brain?
They are connected. So animals have emotions as well. Human emotions also, but a lot of when we're having an emotion, we do sort of add in that human brain sort of stories that we're telling ourselves. And that is very human brain. Animals don't really, as far as I can tell anyway, they don't really tell themselves stories the way that people do. We're a kind of a storytelling kind of bunch. So, and when we're thinking about systems 1 and 2, there are structures in the brain that work with both. So it's not like the amygdala only works with system 1. It also works with system 2. It does have some functions elsewhere. So because basically the brain evolved using the existing structure. So a lot of the existing stuff is there, and then we kind of put a little skin of human brain on top. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So the issue is that the stuff that we've developed with our human brains, namely technology, has evolved a lot faster than our human brains have. Our human brains basically still kind of think that we are back on the savannah and that we are in trouble from predators that are much larger than we are. So that's why now I personally don't have a problem with speaking in public. I'm happy to just get up on a stage and start yapping, but I know a lot of people do have an issue with it. And they get up on stage and they might freeze, which is, fight, flight, or freeze. I should add in the freeze reflex. Or they might find, like their heart's beating really hard and they feel like their breath, they're kind of almost panting and their eyes are dilating, and all of that stuff is a fear reaction. And obviously that doesn't help you when you're standing on a stage trying to talk to people. But your brain is just like, okay, we're afraid. That must mean that a predator is after us. So we have to do this thing so that we can run away from the tiger that's about to eat us. And of course, in modern day culture, most of us are not really in danger of being eaten by tigers. But the brain is still kind of on that thing. So that's why a lot of technology actually is very anti-productive. And we just, even though we have developed this technology, our brains have not kind of developed along with the technology that we've developed, which is why a lot of modern stuff is kind of keeps us from being productive, really. And the human aspects of the brain are key to productivity. So, and I say human aspects, but really the other aspects are key too, because I'm going to get into how you can tell like what's a good time during the day to do your human brain thinky work. But basically, if there's something that is bad for your brain, it's going to be bad for productivity, which I think it's kind of like an easy way to tell if you're trying to think, okay, well, if I'm trying to be productive and I want to do this, is it good for my brain? Is it bad for my brain? And if it's bad for my brain, then it is going to be bad for productivity. And I wanted to get into some neuro-myths and things that are not true. So, science, as I'm sure a lot of you know, because you're innovators, but science kind of gets new information and changes things over time. I mean, I remember when I was a kid growing up, I was told that that you can't get new brain cells, that once a brain cell dies, that's it, you're less one brain cell for the rest of your life. And that's totally untrue. So there's a lot of things that maybe we thought were true, they're no longer true. The other thing with some of these myths is popular culture kind of takes, something that happened in rats one time and then extrapolates it to humans are like this or something like that. So it is not true that people are either right-brained or left-brained. So you hear that a lot. And I can't remember, like one of them is sort of like the artistic brain, and then the other one is like the math and numbers brain, and one side does one thing, one side does the other thing, and that's just not what happens. But it's a myth that's out there. Another one is that women have fundamentally different brains than men. Not true. I mean, the difference between women's brains and men's brains is really a function of hormones. We do have different hormones. And not just sex hormones, but we do have some different hormones, and that's kind of the difference. But as far as brain structure, there's no real difference. And then the third one, I think this is a big one, and it turns out that in every age, if you look at history, people sort of think of the brain as being like what the latest technology is. So when fluid mechanics was a thing, when that was kind of the new technology, people were comparing the brain to things that go on in fluid mechanics. And certainly there are some fluid mechanics that go on in the brain, but that's not the entire brain. So a very common thing is to think that our brains are like computers, and they are not. And they are very different in some aspects that really affect productivity. So and you can see this for yourself, because if you think about retrieving a memory, humans store memories with emotion, which is why you remember things where you were either super happy or totally miserable, because the function that stores memory also uses emotion processing, and obviously computers don't. If you ask them something, they will just return whatever the information is you asked for in the first place, whether or not the computer liked the memory. So there are some very different things. The other thing is that a computer can run 24/7, 365, as long as you keep it plugged in. A human computer does not need to take a break. It does not need to kind of relax and hang out with a family pet. It doesn't need a hobby, and human brains do. The other really big myth, and this is what I think a lot of these so-called, they call themselves productivity gurus, but really they're just like, okay, do a lot of work for a long time, which is not productivity, is this belief that human brains can multitask. They can't. The human brain can do one thing at a time. And if you think you're multitasking, it's because your brain is switching very rapidly between these tasks. So if you are, for example, if you think that you can drive and text, you cannot. And please let me know when you're on the road, because I want to be off it, because distracted driving is a problem. Because when you're looking at your text, you're not really paying attention to the road. And then if you're looking at the road, you're not really paying attention to the text, because your brain cannot do those two things at once. And I'm talking about kind of heavy processing, because I think we've all had that experience where you're driving home along a familiar route, and then when you get home, you can't even remember the drive because you were just thinking about something the whole time. And that's largely because a lot of your muscle memory just kind of powered through. But if you're doing two things that really require your brain to think, it can't. It's got to switch between the two. And the other issue with that is that the switching between, although computers can do it, right? You can just hop right from one browser tab to another. You can, if you have your Excel open, you can hop right from your Excel to your PowerPoint spreadsheet or to your internet browser. The human brain is not like that. It takes a minute, or not a minute, but it takes a little bit of time, and it tires the brain out, because, and this is where we get back to that we've still got this, essentially this kind of Stone Age brain. We did not have computers on the savannah. We didn't even have chairs. Humans are mainly built to stand up, like lie down and squat, but not really. Sitting isn't actually that great for the human body, and it's not something that our ancestors really did. So when you kind of think about, okay, well, were we multitasking on the savannah? No, right? You might be with another pack of people going to hunt some food or gather some food, or you were back at the village kind of hanging out with your buddies, maybe doing some grooming, which is a way to bond. But you weren't switching from one thing to another. You weren't running, chasing down a predator and then stopping in the middle to look at your smartphone and figure out what was going on. So this is just not something that was built. This is not something that our ancestors experienced. So it's not built into the human brain. So when we're asking our brain to do things, we're asking it to do things that it really didn't develop to do. And in all those cases, it's draining, it's tiring. System 2, which is the kind of the thinky brain, that's our human brain. It's an energy hog. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to run that thing. And most animals are kind of built to conserve energy when they can. So the human brain would actually rather be in the default state, which is not doing human thinky things, but like hanging out, being with people, or eating some food or something like that. So that's kind of why all these things that modern culture says that we should be asking our brains to do is actually making our brains more tired. And obviously, the more tired the brain, the less productive you're going to be.
Well, I had a question about the last slide. So just going back on, what was it? Split. What was the term? Split. doing two things at once, multitasking.
Oh,
Okay, so
multitasking,
in
yeah.
terms of multitasking, so what about something like playing the piano? Because if you have one hand, two different hands playing different tempos and different keys, so is that not considered multitasking?
Not really, because you're doing one task, which is playing the piano. You might be spreading it across two hands, but it's just the one playing the piano. Now, if you're trying to play the piano and look at your phone at the same time, that would be multitasking, because that's like two different tasks.
Mhm. But I feel like someone could do that, you know?
You think so? See, that's because modern culture says that you should be able to multitask, and that people with smartphones. But like I said, that's not what's happening. Your brain is switching between the two back and forth. So if you're in front of a piano and you got your smartphone in your hand, when you're looking at your phone and you're texting or you're scrolling or whatever it is that you're doing, you're not really paying attention to your piano playing.
Mm,
And when you're playing the piano, you're kind of focused on, if you have the music in front of you, you might be focused on reading the music, or you're focused on what your hands are doing, but you're not really paying attention to what's going on here. And if you're trying to do both, you're really switching between the two of them back and forth, back and forth. And that's what's draining your brain. That's what's tiring it out.
okay. And then, but even those, you know how some people are like those one-man bands where they have like the flute and then they have the drums, they pick up their legs and then, and then maybe they have some type of, I don't even know. You know what I'm talking about those. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of that, yeah. I mean,
is that
that's
not
that's kind of well,
multitasking?
that's kind of using the whole body to do one thing, which is play music. So
Okay.
you're really focused on the one task of music.
And
Mhm.
Because what
I just have to say, Jacoby, I have a couple of exercises that you can do that will show to you that multitasking is an absolute myth. You're switch tasking when you think you're multitasking, I promise you. So we'll do them together. Remind me on Monday when we have our meeting.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just multitask, switching between the tasks really fast is just draining for the brain, which is why it drains productivity. So here, what I call unproductive productivity are the things that are absolutely unproductive. So if you talk to one of the gurus out there, they'll tell you, oh, you shouldn't do that, or minimize that because it's not going to result in anything, but actually your brain needs these unproductive things in order to be productive. So I have this image of a tank here, so you can kind of think of your productivity as a tank. And if you fill up your tank, then you can maximize your productivity, the next day or for the next period of time. And everything that you do that reduces what you've got in the tank is also going to reduce your productivity. So there's rest, and there's two kinds of rest. So one rest is after you're doing concentrated work. So again, remember that we did not evolve on the savannah doing tax returns. I always use accountants as an example. We didn't evolve doing tax returns. So there is a limited amount of time that your brain has that it can really do very concentrated, focused work, like reviewing a tax return. And it's about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. That's how much you get. And after that, your brain just needs you to go away from the thing and do something else. Stretching is good. Taking a little walk is good. Basically doing something that is unproductive productivity to kind of recharge for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And then you can get back to it and you'll be fresh and your brain can kind of, keep going with the focus. Because the interesting thing is that brains, you've only got, and when I say you, I mean everybody, every human, we only have about 3.5 to 4 hours of this very concentrated work in us. The brain just does not have more than that, because when we kind of evolved on the savannah, we didn't really need more than that, right? I mean, we needed some time to go maybe hunt down some food and kind of focus on that, or play with friends and stuff, but we didn't, there was no 8-hour workday, which by the way is sort of a 20th century factory innovation anyway. It's not, the 8-hour workday is a complete fabrication. Everybody made it up. It has nothing to do with anything, but it's just, what we do. So if you think about, okay, 8-hour day, and I've got maybe half of that, if my productivity tank is completely full, I get half of that with productive work. So when I say productive work, doing administrative tasks is not productive work. Doing emails is not productive work. That kind of stuff, needs to be done, but can be saved for another time that is not your focus time. You also need rest every night, 7 to 8 hours. And it kind of cracks me up, the people who say, oh yeah, I get up at 4 in the morning, and I'm like, well, if you go to bed at 8, that's fine. Because, and the reason for this, again, this is actually based on science, because the brain does a lot of work while you sleep. And some of the work is physical work, or well, the body and the brain do a lot of work while you're sleeping. So some of it's repairing. So for example, when you're weightlifting, and here I am lifting my weights. When you're weightlifting, when you do the heavy weights, it causes little tears in your muscle. And when your body repairs the muscle, that's how you get stronger. Well, when does that happen? It happens during sleep, because you're not using those muscles while you're sleeping. The brain also does things like it can either strengthen or prune back neural pathways. So if you have a habit, whether it's good or bad, your brain is like, oh, well, we need this neural pathway because we use it all the time. So going to strengthen it. And then if you have a habit that you're not really using, the brain's like, again, it's kind of this conservation of energy. Going to prune it back, going to, take out this neural pathway because it's not being used. So evidently we don't need it. So that's why, and there's several stages of sleep, and your body needs to go through two or three of those stages every night in order to do all of the repair work. And that's also a lot of times when learning happens, all that kind of stuff. And again, it's subconscious, right? So it's happening while we're sleeping. We're not aware of it, but it's happening. You have to play. I love telling business owners that they have to play. You have to play. Your brain requires you to play, or else it is not happy and it is not productive. You also need to exercise. I talk to people sometimes where they're like, I'm so busy, I don't have time to exercise. And I'm like, well, you need to take something else out. Your brain needs oxygenated blood flow, and you get that with exercise. You don't get it by sitting around. You don't really get it by standing around either. You have to move to get that up to your brain. And also, as you know, exercise also has mental health benefits and physical benefits in addition. So basically, as close as we're going to get to a miracle pill, exercise is it. Same with nutrition. Your brain needs your brain and your body, right? They need certain nutrients to function well. Time with others. And I actually am an introvert, which you may not be able to tell, but I am, because I require a lot of time to recharge by myself. I enjoy being with people, but then at some point I'm like, okay, I got to go be by myself for a while. But even introverts need to spend time with others. It's just that introverts don't necessarily need to spend the same amount of time with other people that extroverts might. So extroverts get a kick out of going to networking events and going to parties, and that recharges them up. And introverts might enjoy the parties, they might enjoy the networking, but they recharge when they're by themselves. But we developed as a social species. The reason that we made it as a species is because we teamed up together to hunt down larger prey. We teamed up together to fight off predators that were trying to come into the village. I mean, that's how we survive. We're here because we're social. And that means that your brain needs social time. And so the issue here, of course, is that the brain doesn't recognize time spent on Facebook as social time, because our brains don't recognize kind of like if you're texting somebody or if you're posting something to somebody, that's not registering as social time to the human brain. The human brain wants you to be in front of people and hearing people, and that's what registers. So yeah, I have a whole comment about the whole metaverse thing that I will avoid so that I can get through this slideshow. But we need to be with people. If you're introverts, you need a little bit less time with people. If you're an extrovert, you need a little bit more time with people, but we all need people. Yeah, and I was just looking at the chat, and it's so true that we glorify busyness, and daily mindfulness practices are really helpful as well. Like you could call that rest or play, kind of depending on how you do it. But that absolutely does help you refill your tank. And then there's hobbies and sports and things. So doing cross stitch, being part of a rec league, all of these things, especially doing things where you're with other people. My aunt is a big quilter, and so they go to local quilt shop and have a stitch and bitch, and that's the kind of thing that not only keeps your brain kind of working, because you have to do all of the fine-tuned stuff with the needle, but you also get your social time. And the same with sports. If you belong to like a rec league or something, the sports work with that as well. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about chronotype, which you may or may not have heard of. So I will say that I originally, the only chronotypes I had ever heard of were the morning lark and the night owl. And people would be like, well, are you a morning, are you an early bird, or are you a late night person? And I would be like, I am neither. This doesn't work for me at all. Turns out there's actually 4 types of chronotypes, not 2. And I think that, yeah, okay. So the early birds, you can think of yourself as a lion. And typically your focus time is going to be a little bit earlier in the day. So it's really, being an entrepreneur is really good if you have kind of an unusual chronotype, because then you can schedule your work around your time. So if you're a lion, you're an early bird, and 4:30 a.m. is a great time for you to wake up, and you are ready to work at 7 a.m., but you're trying to work in a 9-to-5 job. So you've lost 2 hours of productivity before you get to work. That makes it a lot more difficult. Certainly remote work helps with that, because you can get your work done earlier than the day really starts, and then say, okay, I did my work. Most people, I myself also am a bear. So that's kind of the middle of the road, not an early bird, not a late night person. 9 to 5 actually works pretty well for most bears. It's a reasonable work schedule. It's kind of like, you're kind of just, get up with the sun, go to sleep when the sun goes down. I mean, not exactly, obviously, but kind of around that. And so our focus times might be from like 10 to 2. Mine is actually about from 9 to noon. So these are kind of approximate times. But this is the time that when I want to do some very focused, concentrated work, I actually block my my time off. I don't allow people to book hourly calls with me during my focus time. I kind of keep that as sacred as I possibly can, so that I have that time to really knock out work. And I got to say, like when I'm writing, I can actually feel. First of all, I can feel like at about the hour point when your brain needs a break. I can tell I'm, my writing all of a sudden is really hard and I'm tired, and I'm like, oh, well, it's time to take a break. And then I come back to it. And when I do it at this time, I can get so much more done. I mean, and it's a huge difference for me. I mean, I will say I write very fast. Most people don't write this fast, but I can get like 2,000 words an hour when I'm doing it at the right time. And when I've had my breaks and I've done all of that, that's a lot. If I don't have it, I can only do about 1,000 to 1,500 words. So it's a big difference. So a wolf is what people used to call a night owl. And the focus time is usually later. So again, this might not work if you're 9 to 5 and you get this big rush of energy at 5 o'clock, and that's the time that you want to do your work, but your workday is supposedly over. It makes it very difficult unless you're working remotely. And then there's dolphins, and they typically have difficulty sleeping. So a good focus time for them is usually about 10 to 2, just because it's not so early in the morning, but it's also not so late that they're already drained by that time. And I I actually have a quiz for my clients that will tell them, whether they're a lion, a bear, a wolf, a dolphin. If you have been working for some time, you probably know when your good time to work is. So you probably know what your chronotype is. Can you be a combo of two chronotypes? Most people fit into one, but the focus time does shift a little bit. So for example, if you wake up early in the morning naturally, you are a lion, but your focus time could be a little bit later than 8, or it could even be a little bit earlier. Some people like to get to work at like 7. So there's a little bit of flex in the focus time. And generally, if you start experimenting with what times work for you, you'll figure it out, because when you align your focused, concentrated, thinky work with your chronotype time, work will actually feel easier. It won't necessarily feel easy, but it will definitely feel easier. And you'll find that you get a lot more done. There we go. Okay. So another thing that is sort of key for productivity is to schedule wisely. So again, doing your thinky time during your good time for thinky work. Really prioritizing what will get results. What 3 things do I need to work on each day? A lot of times people end up with these really huge task lists, and that is not helpful. Some of them might be because there are some people that just want to check things off, which is fine, but that does not get you forward if you are not checking off the right tasks. The 3 things that you need to work on, and if you have time, you could work on another. I think you have to kind of work sequentially. So you might have 4 projects that you really want to do. Focus on one and get those priorities done. Then when you've got that, then you can move to the next and figure out your priorities there, and then move to the next. And again, really focusing on what is going to get the results. That is how you're going to be productive, because instead of wasting 4 hours of the day just kind of messing around, if you already know what your priorities are, and you get to work and you're like, okay, I got to do this, and this, and start knocking them out, that's when you get to have a nice short work day, or shorter work day, depending on how much stuff you have to do.
Oh, JJ, would you recommend, because I hear different things from different people, but would you recommend writing out your task in the beginning of the day or the night before?
I think the night before is better. I will say that the night before is better, but it's kind of one of those things where done is better than perfect. So for example, each chronotype, if you read about your chronotype, you'll read about the right exercise time for you, which is like when your body is most able to do exercise and it's happiest to do it. And that is like, so a bear is, I think, supposed to do exercise like at night, and I don't do that. I do mine in the morning because I might not have time to do it at night, or somebody might need my help at night, or there's a happy hour I want to go to, something happens. So for me, even though it's not the best time for me to exercise, I know that if I do it in the morning, I get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of the same thing of doing your priorities the night before. They're done. They're ready for you when you walk in the door. Another thing that really affects your productivity is the number of decisions that you make in a day. Because decisions are human brain work. They're tiring.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, Steve Jobs always wore like a black turtleneck and a pair of jeans, and Zuck has a hoodie. I personally like to wear different clothes, but a lot of people do wear a sort of uniform just because it is one less decision to make. When I was in corporate, if I had a big meeting, I would lay out my clothes before. I had my shoes ready to go. I had everything ready to go just because that was one less thing I had to deal with. And like I said, I'm not a morning person. I'm a bear. I'm not a morning person. So I don't want to have to deal with that stuff in the morning. So at the end of the day, while everything's still fresh, you can write it down. And I think that helps most people. But if that can't be done, then writing it in the morning is the next best thing.
Right, right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, I guess we can't really I sometimes do this as a quiz. So I'm sort of saying, okay, let's schedule wisely, prioritize. So I have here 4 startup entrepreneur tasks. One is join a Chamber of Commerce networking association. One is identify your target client / avatar. One is hire a social media assistant. And then the next is find out where your potential clients hang out, and that could be online or offline. And anybody can jump in if you want. What is the first task that you should prioritize out of these 4? Oops.
Target market.
That's right. Skipped a couple there. Yeah. So identifying your target client avatar is absolutely the first thing you should do. What is the second thing you should do? Anybody got an idea?
Find out where they hang out.
Yep, absolutely.
Jump along.
And what's the third thing after that?
Social media assistant. I'm guessing at this point. There were only
Actually,
2 left.
You're close, but no, it would actually be join the networking association. And then you can hire your social media assistant. Yeah, because these are, so obviously in order to sell your thing, you need to know what your target client is, because you need to know what their pain points are so that you can say, so that when you're talking to them, you bring up the pain point and then say, oh, well, here's the solution, right? So I might go and say, oh, well, I work with people whose businesses, their back offices are in the chaos zone. And everybody that's in that situation is like, yes. And then I say, okay, well, I have a solution for that. They say, yes. And finding out where they might be, whether they are in a local networking group or they might be in an online networking group. So obviously you need to know who you're targeting to figure out where they are. So if you are looking for, let's say you sell to bikers, to people who own Harleys, you're probably not going to find them, you might find them hanging out at a local motorcycle place, or they might be in a motorcycle group on Facebook or Instagram or something. Yeah. And then you can join, and not all businesses really need a chamber of commerce, although most people do need to join a networking association just because, it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? You meet somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, or you meet somebody who is your target client, which is always nice, but doesn't always happen. I had a business where I did not belong to a chamber of commerce because at the time my target client wasn't necessarily a small business, so it didn't make any sense. And now it does make sense for me to join one. And so the last one is social media, because social media, it is important, and depending on the kind of business that you have, certain social media channels are going to be better than others. And you do need to make sure that you're on there regularly and making sure that people can see you. But essentially, social media is basically another marketing channel. That's really all it is. So hiring an assistant to kind of help you out with that is kind of may or may not be useful. I actually use a scheduling software instead of an assistant. And so far it seems to work. So when we're talking about scheduling wisely and we're talking about decisions, and you have limited amount of decisions during the day. So everybody who's ever tried to lose weight knows how it is, where you have your nice healthy breakfast and you might have a good healthy lunch, and then you come home at night and dinner is an entire sleeve of Oreos and a pint of ice cream, because you just don't have the willpower at the end of a long draining day to be like, oh, actually I shouldn't eat this. This isn't really great for me in any way. You're just like, oh my God, I need to eat something. This looks good, so that's what I'm going to eat. So you really want to save your decisions. You want to save your decisions for the important stuff. So having a routine and putting things in habits really kind of helps you out with this. So just having your, and I've got some examples of what you might put in your morning routine. You might not do all of these. You might not have time for all of these. You might not be interested in all of these, but things like your journaling, your meditation. Somebody earlier had mentioned the mindfulness meditation, morning pages, exercise, breakfast, inspiration, reading, time with your family and friends, whatever that looks like for you, putting that in a routine so that you have it. All right. Your work routine, again, morning or earlier in the day, kind of review what you need to do. This is also really good for people that have difficulty kind of self-starting. And also making sure that you're doing your concentrated work at the right time for your chronotype. Taking regular breaks, working, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to be working on your business, not just in your business. So if you're an accountant, yes, you need to be doing tax returns, but you also need to be working on your accounting, business, marketing, doing all that kind of stuff. Batching tasks together, specifically email. Email is a distraction. Email is not effective. Email is not productive. Yes, you have to do it, but that is not something that really is going to move you forward in your business. So batching all of your emails together, like I don't even look at my emails before I get to work, because my chronotype time is 9 to noon. So I get to work at 9, I do my focused work, and then I look at my emails. And I look at my emails all at once. And I do some stuff, and then I go back and do other things. So batching the things that are like in tasks together just means that you're doing less task switching, which again is better for your brain. It's less tiring if you batch all of your emails together, and you can let your clients know, look, I let my clients know, I don't read my emails in the morning, so I'm not going to respond until noon. If there's an emergency, they can call me, but for the most part, you don't really need that. And then, so at the end of the day, also maybe having a little closing ritual to kind of say, especially if you're working from home, like, okay, work day is over, and I'm gonna kind of, put a cap on the work day, and I'm gonna go do my other stuff that is not work. You identify your 3 priorities for the next day, straighten up and put away. Your evening routine, what is good for your brain. So probably all of you know, blue light is bad for your brain. Because it actually suppresses melatonin, because the blue light says to your brain, it's daytime. We don't need to go to sleep. So when you're looking at any kind of screen at night, the blue light is saying, oh no, it's the middle of the day. Don't fire up all the sleepy time stuff, which makes it a lot harder for people to sleep. So don't put your phone in the bedroom, charge it in a different room. About an hour before bed, no more heavy food, no more screens, no more heavy exercise. Light exercise is actually perfectly fine, but don't run your marathon the hour before bed. Reading, and I have fun time with yourself and or a partner, so I'll leave you to decide what fun time might mean. Meditation, journaling, and again, not all of these may be right for you, but having this routine will help you kind of wind down, helps your brain adjust to, okay, it's sleepy time. So it's easier for you to just sleep. And then, so finally, social media, as most of you hopefully know by now, it's actually designed to be addictive. All of the little pings, the little notifications are designed to keep you on that screen, because that's how the social media platform gets your eyeballs in front of the advertisers. And that's how the social media platform makes money. And that is all social media platforms. They all do it this way. This is how they all make money. So all those likes, all those little notifications are designed to get you to buy. And that's essentially what is happening. So put your phone down. Disable notifications. I actually have taken social media off my phone. It's not on there. I do not have email notifications on anything. I don't have it on my phone. I don't have it on my laptop, because I batch my emails. I will look at my emails when I get to them, and not because they popped up in the corner of my screen. So if you're working and that screen pops up, even if you don't have a noise, but you can still see it in your peripheral vision, it distracts you. You can use a timer if you need to for that focused work, to kind of help you get those tasks done if you need. read and respond to me emails only during certain times. And most importantly, just focus on one thing at a time. That's what your brain is designed to do. That is what it wants to do. That is easiest on it, is to look at one thing at a time. So do your tax review, do your writing, do your coding for your Virtue Road VR thing, and only do that one thing. And when you are done with that thing, then you can move on to another thing. So here I do have some additional resources if you're interested in kind of learning more about the neuroscience behind what I talked about today. There's Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, Deep Work by Cal Newport, The Elephant in the Room, which is basically our need for social validation, essentially. Life-Changing Magic, I'm Not Giving a F, and Barking Up the Wrong Tree, which actually has a lot of neuroscience in it. So these are all books that I find interesting. Maybe it's because I'm a big nerd, but it will also help you kind of understand what's going on in your brain and why I'm saying these things for productivity. And then that's my, my website, my email. And so I hope that I left time for questions. I'm not sure if I did. I hope I did.
Anyone, any questions? We have time.
Okay.
Wow, that's a good question. Out of these books, which one would you recommend out of all of them? If I had to pick one.
A good question, actually. I think I would probably say Barking Up the Wrong Tree.
Mhm.
There's a lot of neuroscience in there, but there's also things about emotional and physical health and wellness. And it's kind of dives into all these things that you need to do for your brain to keep it happy and healthy, which in turn, of course, makes you productive. Thank you, Levon and Nisreen. Nisreen, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Hey JJ, it's Raj. Thanks so much for the great workshop. This was pretty useful, it's I kind of feel the whole bear lion stuff, there's different times I feel that. My question is like, so I have got some tasks where, like you have to kind of do it and then let it be for 5-10 minutes and then come back to it. So like, would you say like, because I feel like, I start a task, then I do something else in that 5 minutes, and then I come back, and I feel myself switch tasking. So like, should I do that, or should I kind of like just relax for 5 minutes, or what do you think I should do?
Yeah, I mean, definitely relaxing for 5 minutes, depending on the other task. I mean, if you go and do another task and it's not really that mentally taxing, it might be okay, but maybe doing some deep breaths or maybe taking a little mindfulness check-in during that time might be kind of helpful.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'll give that a try. Usually I'll just do two things,
Right. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, and again, I kind of want to emphasize that some of the stuff I'm saying really is, in an ideal world, this is how you would do it. But sometimes you're working for somebody else or you're on deadline and you can't just do your work in that 4 hour, you do have to do some work outside your good chronotype time. I mean, ideally you would plan that doesn't happen very often, but even I do find myself sometimes I have a deadline and I just really have to cram in a long day. And I know that that's not ideal and I try to minimize when that happens, but yeah, I kind of feel like saying that will never happen will never happen. Right. I mean, there are times when that's just what we have to deal with. So I think if you can make most of your time, productive, doing things during the good time for you, batching tasks that you can. If you do that most of the time, and then sometimes you got these days that are just going to get away from you, I mean, that's just kind of how it is. Again, it's kind of doing the best that you can, because nobody, including myself, can really be perfect with all this stuff.
Hi, JJ. This is Steve. Thanks again for talking to us today. One of my questions is dealing with age. So when I was young in the Navy, you know, and I don't know if you've worked with the military at all, but a lot of times when you're on a 6-month deployment, you're going almost nonstop, and
Right,
it's sort of it's exhausting, but it's also invigorating at the same time. And
right,
of course, I
right.
was maybe a third the age I am now. So then you get older and you find that's a lot harder. You end up taking, like, I don't sleep well, so I get up early, I work, and sometimes I'll take a nap, and then I'm fully refreshed and ready to go. So yeah,
Mhm.
anything on that, like in terms of age, how that affects us?
Well, actually, yeah, I mean, it does obviously, and naps are a good thing, especially if you can't get the time during the night. And I think also as people age, they do tend to need a little bit less sleep. But absolutely, the stuff that you can do in your 20s. I mean, I had a summer where I had 3 jobs and I was just going, 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 and I found it very invigorating. And now that just seems, frankly, it seems hellish to me. We do, the brain does take more time to do things. As we grow older, you know, things are less elastic, compared to the way they were when they were younger. It takes longer for things to repair, and that's just sort of, that does kind of come with age. So taking naps is actually pretty great, because it does give you that refresh. It does give you that recharge that maybe a mindfulness meditation might have done 20 years ago, but isn't going to cut it now. So you do, I think the main thing as you grow older is I think you do have to build in more periods of rest, and you do have to build in your productivity tank might leak a little bit more the older that you get, and so you're not going to get quite as much out as maybe you did 20 years ago. And just kind of staying active and doing all these things still is obviously what keeps people young, and you know, helps them keep going through the ages. But you will not be as productive at age 70 as you were at 30. You know, you're just not going to be. So kind of working through that and making sure that you are, you know, it's even more important when you're older to make sure that you're getting the exercise, that you're getting the nutrition, to really kind of help stabilize the tank as much as you possibly can.
Thank you.
Yes, Rhonda, a nightmare, exactly.
Anyone else? Well, okay, so I also dropped in the chat. So this workshop was recorded, so you can check it out on the link that I dropped in the chat. So it's the first link with the YouTube. The second link is where you can give JJ feedback on her presentation today. So, you know, I'm sure she would love to see what you guys have to say. So go ahead and click on that as well. And then and the third link I sent in the chat is just our future workshops we have coming up. So if that's it, is there any last words you want to leave the audience with, JJ?
Well, thanks to Rec Innovation Lab and you guys again. I enjoyed it, and yeah, please feel free to give me constructive feedback, because I do a lot of these workshops and presentations, and I do want to make sure that people are getting things out of them, and that I'm answering questions and doing all of these things. So yeah, and I would like to, my last thought really is, if it is good for your brain, it will be good for productivity. And if it is bad for your brain, it will be bad for productivity. That's a very easy rule to remember, I think, when it comes to when you're trying to figure out, is this going to help me be productive or not? You can usually definitely tell the things that are not going to help you be productive.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you, JJ. And you know, everyone just, you know, have a great day today. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.